Hey chums, welcome to our Final Fantasy VII Remake spoiler discussion. With me, via the power of the internet, is the always serious and studious Mr. Rors. Say hello, Mr. Rors.
What's happening, chums? How's
Sound
everybody doing?
Sound a bit more enthusiastic, you
I can't.
swine.
Oh, I've been indoors for 9 weeks.
Yeah, we're still in partial lockdown. Is it?
Yeah,
like
so they've started easing some restrictions.
easing? Even though our infection rate is still high, and we still got the highest deaths in Europe. But we're not here to
highest
discuss.
in the world, y'all.
Well, behind the United States, it's not something to be happy about. But we're not here to talk about coronavirus, are we, Mr. Ross?
God, I hope.
Well, we're here to talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Indeed.
Yeah,
because we've got a lot of opinions.
I thought once I think I said it in a Resident Evil video. Once Mr. Rose has finished Final Fantasy VII, we might do a little video, little discussion about our thoughts, our fears, our reactions.
Yeah, because I only finished it about 2 days ago because spoilers on the spoiler discussion, I found it an absolute slog at times, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, so we'll start this off by discussing what was new and what we liked about the new additions and what it did differently. Yeah, so do you want to just say what you liked about the new additions to the game, Mr. Ross?
One thing I did really like is there's a part in Chapter 4 where you go to Jesse's house, and it just sort of fleshes out Jesse Wiggs. Who's Wiggs? Jesse Biggs and
Jesse
Wedge.
Wiggs.
Jesse wears wigs.
Yeah. I agree. I liked that they fleshed out the side characters as well. Jesse, James, and Wedge a lot more. Especially Jesse. I think they gave her a lot more focus in this game than they did in the original. Because in the originals, they sort of were just there. They had some quippy one-liners, and then they
died on the pillar.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later as well.
We'll get to that. Yeah, that's in part of what that ties into what they did differently. But yes, that mission I enjoyed that as well. I didn't enjoy the addition of the soldier Roach.
Yeah, what's the point of that guy?
I feel like in this game they've added a lot of sort of very stereotypical sort of Japanese JRPG traits.
Kind of anime.
Yeah, very anime-esque.
Kind of gone anime, and we like
anime,
but
we love anime, but it sort of felt out of place. This game, is it just me or am I talking crazy? Or do you agree?
As I said, I really liked that Chapter 4 mission, but it kind of starts with, but right at the beginning of it is Roach's introduction, the motorbike chase, and he's doing all these ridiculous friggin' bike stunts that look straight out of Advent Children. And
yeah, that's why
immediately I was like, oh, fuck this guy. Fuck all his stupid bike shit. Fuck his mullet. And then you fight him and then he never comes back.
You never see him again, do you?
What's the point?
I thought it would be a recurring adversary stroke. Because we knew there was going to be some things different. They were going to add it because this whole game is set in one location, set in Midgar, which in the original was you can get through it in 4-5 hours.
Around about 5-6, I think. I actually replayed it before Remake came out because I've played it a load of times. I hadn't played it in a few years, so I thought, all right, I should play through Midgar just to sort of refresh my memory before the remake comes out. I think it took me about 6 hours, but I was quite thorough. So you can get through it in probably about 5-ish.
Yeah, 5-ish. But so, what was your game time completion What was it? How long did it take you to complete the remake?
It was around 37 hours.
Yeah, mine took 50, but I think because the reason was in chapter 14, there's a lot of side quests, and I think you missed out on you didn't bother with a lot of them.
No, I skipped them entirely.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, the game was a slog for me at times, and it took me over a month to finish. It came out on the 10th of April. I got it the day before, so I started it April 9th, and I finished it May 15th, I think. So yeah, it took me over a month to get through it, and it was just because I did not want to play it a lot of the time.
It took you a lot. I finished it before you, and I was only playing it on the weekends because of my working hours. I can't play it in the evening. But you found it a slog. I probably on the opposite end. I quite liked some of the side quests, but when I have to say, when you first go into Sector 7 and Tifa's showing you around, and she said, "Oh, there's some jobs for you to do." I was like, "Oh, cool! I'm going to be like a monster hunter, bounty." You do that one mission, and that's it. You know, when you go and clear out some monsters and get some money for it, and they're like, "Oh, Cloud, the monster hunter." I was like, "Oh, cool! This is what I can do this throughout the game. I can do a little bit to earn a bit more money and experience points." But once that's done, you don't do it again. I was like, "Oh, all right, that's it then."
Yeah,
okay.
What's that chapter 3? That is, isn't it?
Chapter 3, I think. Yeah.
That was the first point at which I was like having second thoughts about the game, because you kind of like, you've just done the bombing run. Run was amazing, and then chapter 2, you like see the destruction that the bombing run caused, which was also really cool, and seeing a bit more of sort of life above the plate.
Yeah.
And then you go back to Sector 7, and then you're like, right, now go and like kill 3 rats. And to be fair, there were only 3 side quests in that chapter, but none of them were particularly engaging. And I was kind of, because it's a remake of one of my favorite games of all time, I didn't want to leave stuff undone, but I wasn't enjoying quite a lot of the optional stuff. So I was getting into a point where I was doing it, but kind of begrudgingly. And so yeah, chapter 3 was the first point. I was like, I'm not sure if I like this. But I sort of forced my way through it, and then chapter 4 was amazing, apart from Roach. But I mean, even the fight against Roach was really good fun, but I just don't like him as a character. So chapter 4 was really good.
Yeah.
But for me, like, if we sort of talk about the pacing for a minute, it was all over the place for me. And I think part of that, it comes from taking sort of like 6 hours and spreading it out to like 35, 40, 50. Because you've got like the big story moments, which are more or less the same as they were in the original. They just make some edits here and there. There's one edit in particular I don't like. I'll talk about that in a minute. But for the most part, the main story beats are pretty similar, but they're so spread out now. And then they've just added stuff in. Like, one thing they added in that I didn't like was, I can't remember what chapter it was, maybe 6, where you're going around like the catwalks underneath the plate, turning off lights.
Oh my god!
To get power to open a gate so you can get into the train tunnels. That was just that was pure filler, if you ask me. And it had some potential to be quite interesting, because the first light you turn off, Tifa's like, "Oh no, that's the light providing artificial sunlight to Sector 6. If we turn it off, they might be in a panic." And they're like, "Oh, moral dilemma. Whatever shall we?" Oh no, we've turned it off, and we're never going to mention it again. So it's just like, oh, we're turning it off. Who cares what happens to them down there? And then after that, you're going through like the train tunnels and stuff and fighting those bloody insects. And that whole section just went on too long. It was like, I think it was like 2 hours in all, from like leaving Sector 7 to getting to the next bombing mission. And it just didn't need to be there, if you ask me. And stuff like that keeps cropping up and slowing the game down. and really messing with the pacing for me. There's like the ghost, the train graveyard as well, which I remember you mentioned it to me just before I got to that point of the game when we were talking about it before. You said, "Oh, the train graveyard's really slow." I think you said it was your least favorite part of the game at that point.
Yeah, they sort of really slowed that section. That part really slowed the game down for me.
Especially considering what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be getting to the pillar to stop Shinra blowing it up and dropping the plane.
Yeah.
But instead we're going to run around in the train graveyard for an hour with a subplot about fucking sad ghosts that came out of nowhere.
Sad ghost kids.
Yeah. It's like, why is this in here? You know?
Yeah.
What about you? How did you find the pacing? Because you say you were playing it sort of once or twice a week.
I quite enjoyed the at the beginning, I really enjoyed the pacing of the game. I thought if sort of you did side quest that was completely like different from what you normally do. I mean, you had a side quest about finding cats, and I like cats, and I even did a video on it we put up on the channel, which took about 5 minutes.
You know what? This game absolutely friggin' loves cats for some reason. I don't know why, but there are so many cats in this game.
I think was it Wedge? You had the
Wedge had cats, and then there was an area in Sector 7 which was like a little cat nursery, and then there was another character who loved cats and wanted to look for them, and there were more cats throughout the game as well. There were just cats everywhere for some reason.
Yeah, and I mean, tying into cats, there's a bit where a cat leads you to a character that you have to go and save, and this leads into the ending as well. Certain characters, which in the original was pretty clear that they died. I think they did die. Turn up alive and well. I mean, the cat leads you down to where Wedge is, and he's alive. Taken back to Arias. Well, she's called Aerith now, not Arias.
Alive.
Yeah.
You've just reminded me about a whole other extra area they inserted that I didn't really like.
What's that?
Secret lab under Sector 7, where the cat leads you to, where you find Wedge.
Oh, the deep ground thing.
Yeah.
Because that was deep ground, wasn't it?
I think so.
You find that giant, those weird like experiments. They're all black, tentacly, like sort of venomish. Yeah. Is that what I'm thinking of? And then you fight a big one.
Yeah.
A big. Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's not explained at all. It's just it just happens. It's not explained, and then the party gets out, and they must have had a little aside off camera where they went, "We're never going to talk about this ever again, all right?" Because it's never brought up again. It's like, why is this in here?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of my main issue with the game is the pacing and just sort of slotting in stuff that doesn't really need to be there, like the few things I just mentioned. But yeah, when it sticks to the script, it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, like there was a part where Cloud gets his own little apartment. I was like, oh, cool. This is going to be Cloud's base of operations. You go there probably once.
two, maybe 3 times total in the entire game.
Yeah, and then that's it. Then you never go back there again.
You never even do anything there, either. You only ever go there to rest, which literally just means cue the next cutscene for the story.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense that he'd have somewhere to sleep if he's staying in Sector 7. But, yeah, I don't know. It felt a bit underutilized.
Yeah. I know the original game is quite linear, but you do get to go back and forth in sections, if I remember correctly. Or no, you don't, do you?
You can.
You do.
You can wander about a bit, but it's more that you revisit a couple of locations a few times. You can backtrack in Remake as well, but it will just take like half an hour because the pathways between each place are really long and narrow corridors.
They do introduce a fast travel system with the chocobos.
Yeah, I skipped that. That was a
Oh,
chapter. That was one of those chapter 14 side quests I skipped.
yeah,
It seemed kind of pointless at that point because you kind of like you're
it's
running
near the
towards
end.
the end at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I did it, and then if you do those, if you find all those chocobos, you just get free travel. That's it. And then after that, it's pretty much like, oh, we got to leave the slums and go up to the top plate.
Yeah,
It's like,
it doesn't, because there's a few times where the pacing is like really pushing you towards a story event, but then the game purposefully slows you down, and it started to really annoy me by the time you get to Wall Market. When Wall Market's cool, it really reminded me of Golden Guy in Shinjuku. And those like sort of tiny little bars, tiny little alleys and stuff. And I enjoyed Wall Market, but then you finish up what you need to do there, and all the new characters you met there are like, "Hey, I've got more missions for you," and I was just like, I really want to push on. Like, I know what's like at the end of Wall Market. I know what's happening. You know, I'm going to go into the sewers, find out that Avalanche are going to not Avalanche that Shinra's going to drop the plate. It's kind of pacing's quite good now, so I was like, I'm just going to skip those. I think there were 3 side quests, and one of them meant going back into the Colosseum to do more battles. And I was like, right, I'm not gonna do that. And then I started struggling with the combat because it feels like it's balanced for you to do everything in the game, and if you skip side content, it starts getting hard. And then I got to chapter 14, and you're sort of like gearing up to go above plate and go to Shinra HQ, and sort of like you're into the final third of the game. And I was like, and then it's like, here's 9 side quests, and I was just like, nah, no thanks. I really want to finish this game. So if I don't push through and ignore it, I will never finish the game because the pacing was getting to me that much. But then you go through and do Shinra HQ, and Shinra HQ was really good.
Yeah, I liked Shinra HQ. You get to learn a lot more about the company, and you get to see more sections of it. But yeah, like we're going to talk about the combat as well, but yeah, because the combat's completely different. It's no longer turn based; it's full on hack and slash. Well, not really hack and slash, is it? What's the combat? It's like is it like the Final Fantasy 15 combat?
Not really, because in 15 you just hold the attack button and your characters will just continuously attack. Where in this one, obviously, it might sound like a small distinction, but you press a button each time you want to attack. Yeah, I quite like the combat. I thought they did pretty well with it, considering you know it's like it's a beloved turn-based RPG, and you've got systems that people still talk about, like Materia and stuff like that, that they still had to keep because otherwise people would have gone nuts. So, but yeah, I think as an action RPG, it is more on the RPG side, whereas a lot of action RPGs are usually more on the action side. So you've still got the ATB gauge to use your abilities, whereas sort of like your standard attacks don't do a great deal of damage, but they build up your ATB gauge with it, which then lets you do like skills and cast magic and stuff, which I think works well. But my only issue with it is how slowly the AI controlled characters build up ATB when you're not controlling them, because they don't really build up any at all. It's so slow. So you have to keep switching, which is fine. I like being sort of pushed to switch characters and do different things because they all play differently as well, which is another string in its bow.
Yeah.
Each character feels distinct. Like, I really like playing as Tifa and just punching the crap out of stuff.
Oh, Tifa was my character in that. In this, she was quick. Her ATB filled up really fast. Her moves were pretty fucking powerful. So yeah, I really liked her.
Hitter. She just felt fun to play as. So yeah, I didn't mind the game sort of incentivizing me to switch characters in battle, because it does kind of, you know, it switches things up for you as well. So you're not just constantly controlling Cloud and mashing square.
It kind of reminded me of Final Fantasy 13, where you didn't get to really choose what your party.
Yeah.
Game told you who was in your party and what characters you had to use for each section. If you know what I mean,
very much. I actually mentioned that on Eurogamer yesterday when I was talking to some people on it there, because I was saying I quite like that you get to sort of play as every character as the sort of the main character at some point, and like Final Fantasy 13 was literally walk forward fight for like 60 hours. But what kept me from going mad in that game is that like every hour or so they switched to a different part of the world with different characters. So that kind of freshened it up a little bit, even though you were still walking forward and fighting. And yeah, 7 Remake kind of does a bit of that as well, where it sort of switches perspective between different characters quite a lot, and I quite appreciated that, because you get a section of the game where one of the other characters is kind of the main character for a while, whereas in the original you're constantly controlling Cloud the whole time through the Midgar section.
Midgar section. I mean, there is a bit. Well, spoilers for Final Fantasy 97. He falls into the to the live stream, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he's sort of out of the picture. You find him and he's comatose. Then you control other characters. You control Tifa. You control Sid.
Yeah.
They sort of become the leader. Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of appreciated that it did that in this, whereas the original didn't do that in the Midgar section. I quite like that you get to play as everyone for a bit, but sort of taking that back to combat, it's like you could be focusing on doing something with Cloud, so you don't really want to switch characters, but then the other 2 characters are useless because they haven't built up any ATB. So I kind of wish the AI control characters built up ATB faster. But I think that's my only sort of major complaint with it, really. It's not even major, because you can switch to them and build up a stack of ATB quite quickly.
I think the combat is built on switching between characters quite a lot, so you can all build up ATB. Because the combat is quite challenging, even with like low level enemies. You can, like, if you go in there all guns blazing, you could find yourself in quite a bit of trouble.
Yeah,
especially when you have ranged enemies and
you need to take those out first.
Yeah, and you have like there's sections where you've got rocket missiles flying towards you, and that takes a lot of your health off. In the because I played it on normal, because you can only play it classic, easy, and normal. So even on normal, it was quite challenging. I mean, hard unlocks after you complete it, but there were some sections, some bosses that I found really challenging. I think the hardest boss I thought was probably Hell House.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that was the longest one anyway. It's long.
Yeah, because he keeps putting up barriers and stuff, so it does kind of go on a bit. I think that was the hardest one I thought as well. But I remember the video I did for the demo when the demo came out. There's a part when you're sort of escaping after you've placed the bomb, and there's a bit you come to, and there's like 2 human enemies, and then there's like 2 turrets up the top. And in the demo, when the first time I played that bit, I got killed because I didn't switch to Barrett and take the turrets out. So you do need to kind of take into account stuff like that, sort of like prioritizing enemies and stuff. And there's if you've looked at videos of it and thought, it looks like just a hack and slash. First of all, why are you watching our spoiler video if you haven't played it? But it's not a mindless hack and slash game. There is quite a bit going on.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like characters, what did you think about the cast, Rors?
I think the cast is probably my favourite thing about it. I think they absolutely nailed all of the characters. We talked a bit about how they fleshed out Jesse, Wedge, and Biggs, and it's hard to say they nailed them because they really weren't characters really in the original game. They were just kind of cardboard cutouts with a few lines really. So I can't really say they nailed them, but I liked what they did with them. They felt like more fleshed out characters. But the main cast of like Cloud, Tifa, Arias, and Barrett, I think they nailed them. And two of them I was a bit worried about, Cloud and Arias, because they've both been in a lot of extra stuff since Final Fantasy VII, like Kingdom Hearts and stuff like that, and their depictions have been very different. And like Arias has been like this pure angel, whereas in the original game she was actually pretty cheeky and sarcastic.
Yeah, she's a bit sassy.
Yeah, and they absolutely got that in this one. She is very sarky and sassy and a bit silly. And Cloud being sort of like the mopey emo guy in later depictions, whereas he wasn't really like that in the original Final Fantasy VII. He was like he was kind of arrogant and standoffish, but he wasn't like moody and emo. And yeah, and again they did that. They made him seem very sort of sure, like cocksure of himself. But also you could tell there was like a hint of sort of almost like social anxiety to him, where he sort of like didn't know how to sort of be around people, didn't know how to fit in. And that really works for his character. As you find out more about him in the original, you understand that's kind of who he is. So I feel like for the cast, they really sort of went back, replayed the original game, and properly understood who these characters are, because I think they nailed them all in the remake.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I really like the cast. I like Barrett, even though in the original I didn't like him. I think he was just like this sort of stereotypical angry black person. But in this,
he does still kind of have a large dollop of that in this. But
I mean, you see, he's very antagonistic towards Cloud in the beginning. Then obviously, like later on in the game, he sort of warms up to him a lot more. He sort of sees him as a comrade and so and the voice actor was good in it as well.
Yeah,
I think all voice really spot on. Like you said, we keep talking about the extended cast because I think they did a really good job of making us care and learn more about those characters. So, like you say, like the Jessie side quest was a really good one because you see them all at her house having a good time, having pizza.
Meanwhile, Cloud's got a
robbing her dying father.
One thing I didn't get about that is like they nicked his ID so they could get into the factory.
Yeah.
Surely that's going to be like logged on Shinra's servers, so they'll know whose ID was used to get in, and they'll be like, "Well, how could this comatose guy have been got in? Maybe we should look at his family. His daughter doesn't live there anymore. She lives in Sector 7 now. I wonder why that is." It seems like a bad idea to like go and rob her own father's ID to get into Shinra to nick explosives.
Another character that showed up quite a lot was good old Johnny.
Yeah,
Johnny, and there's a bit when you first meet Johnny where Cloud nearly kills him. Tifa had to step in and stop him. Tifa's like, "Oh my god, you're going to kill him!" He's like, "Well, yeah." You said he talks.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow.
And then like 2 hours later, he's like, "Hey, bro."
Yeah, bro, we're bros, right, bro? And Cloud's just like, "Oh, I should have just killed you." He told Johnny to get lost in the.
And he just goes to Sector 6 instead. Just goes one sector over.
I just do like the fact that he appears throughout most of the game, and just like after Cloud nearly killed him, and then Tifa had to stop him. But that was good.
Yeah, seeing as we're on the point of cast and you've brought up Johnny, I guess we can talk about sort of the newer characters that have been brought in, because like Johnny is in the original.
He's in the original.
He's not really a character, but I think he kind of works as a bit of sort of light relief character, so I don't begrudge him being there. But new characters like Chadley and
Chadley,
Chocobo Sam and Madame M and Leslie, all these new characters they brought in that I don't give a damn about, and I don't think anyone will care about in about 3 weeks.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how forgettable they are. Yeah. Chad, did you complete his story, his side quest?
No, I didn't do everything because I say I got to the point where I was like, I really need to finish the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't complete his one either. I think I missed out on like 2 monsters to complete it.
I did a fair bit of it, but I didn't do all of it. I can't remember how far I got, but I did a fair bit.
Yeah, Madam M, Sam, yeah. Madam M with the sexy massage. What did you get? Did you get the full on? I got the high price.
Yeah, same. I ain't no cheap. I ain't no cheap, mate. But
yeah,
I think she works. Yeah, she works as a resident of Wall Market because it is a bit sort of a bit
seedy.
Yeah, a bit seedy.
Yeah. Cutthroat.
But I didn't really care about her as a character. Chocobo Sam, I'm sure he was in Final Fantasy 15. There's like multiple characters in Final Fantasy 15 like him.
Yeah.
It's like minor characters, and it's like, oh, I don't care about you. And then Don Corneo's man Leslie.
Oh yeah.
Like chapter 14 was the low point of the game for me. Because you have to you go back into the sewers, the exact same part of the sewers that you've already been through after Don Corneo flushed you down his toilet. And you go down there with this new guy you don't care about. All you find out about him is that Don Corneo nicked his girlfriend.
He needs a wife, doesn't he? Every few years. I don't know what he does with him. Does he like kill him or eat him or something? I don't know.
But yeah, that's all you find out about him. You're like, oh yeah, boo-hoo, mate. We've got more pressing things. Like Arias has been taken by Shinra. They've dropped a plate and probably killed hundreds of people. Although that seems to have been retconned a bit in this. So you go through the same area of the sewers you've already spent an hour in earlier. You fight the same boss, just with some ads. And then you have that frigging bit where the thing steals his necklace, and you've got to chase it around for 10 minutes.
It turns out he didn't steal the key. He didn't. Yeah.
And then, to make matters worse, you get to the end of that point where this Leslie guy's been saying, "Oh, I'll take you. I'll show you how to get above the plate." And you think he's going to show you like a secret entrance? So he gives you a fucking grappling gun. You had grappling guns at the end of chapter 4.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was mad before that point, and at that point I out loud said, "Are you fucking serious?" Because that chapter is just pure garbage filler as far as I'm concerned. It made me angry.
Yeah, you can, like you say, you can just skip the whole thing, which you did, didn't you? So,
well, the side quest you can. That's main story. That part.
Oh, that's the main story. Yeah.
So you have to do that to get the grappling gun, so you can go up above the.
Right. Yeah, to go up. Yeah.
Despite the fact you had grappling guns earlier in the game.
Yeah.
It makes me slightly angry to even be talking about it now, because it was at that point I was like, I'm not sure I'm ever going to finish this game.
Yeah.
But like I said, after that you go to Shinra HQ and it really picked up. So.
Well, you have to get there first, and I feel like that was a bit of a slog. Like you get up to the plate, and you have to climb further up the plate to get to Shinra's building, which then you have to fight a load of enemies and another boss, and you get up there, and But speaking of, like, we spoke about the length. What did you think? You liked the length of the game? Do you think it was too long? Do you think it was too?
I think you could cut the game in half and it would improve it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's way too long and it doesn't really justify its length. Because like I said, there were numerous times throughout it felt like an absolute slog, and I put it down and didn't play it for 3 or 4 days because I'd come up to my room and I'd be like, I should really play Final Fantasy VII. I really don't want to, and I just play something else instead. And I did that multiple times, and that's how you stayed ahead of me, even though you're only playing it on weekends, because I'd play it for like an hour and then I wouldn't touch it for 3 or 4 days.
It shouldn't be like that, really, shouldn't it? You shouldn't play that Final Fantasy VII and think this is a bit of a slog.
No,
you shouldn't really be like that. No.
That's the thing. It's one of my favourite games of all time, the original. No, I wouldn't say I wasn't excited for it. I was excited to see what they were doing with it, but the whole time when people have been calling for a remake for years, and the whole time I've been like, I don't think it really needs one. It's really good as it is, and I always thought if Square Enix make a remake of it, they won't be able to help themselves. They'll want to change stuff, and they have changed quite a lot.
Yeah, it makes me
for the better.
It makes me think about the future. Like if they could take one section like Midgar and stretch that out to probably a 40-hour game, what are they going to do that for practically every main section of the game? So you could possibly be looking at 5 parts.
And they're probably going to take 3 years each.
Yeah, so
that's 15 years.
Yeah, wow, 15 years.
Yeah, but I did say I wanted to talk about one thing they changed in Shinra HQ. I kind of forgot about mentioning it, but there's like in the original, you get captured, you get imprisoned.
Yeah, they changed that.
Yeah, and then you wake up and you follow you see your cells open, you follow a blood trail, and you find President Shinra impaled on Sephiroth's sword.
Oh god, yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, that's all different in this, and I don't really know. I don't see the point because the outcome of it is the same. President Shinra still ends up dead by Sephiroth's sword, but everything around it is different, and I don't think it's for the better.
You end up in passing out because you see a vision of Sephiroth, and end up in Arias' holding cell, which you grew up in, and just you make your same way there, and it plays out the same. But speaking of Sephiroth, this sort of it ties in with the whole what was different and the ending, and we're going to talk about the ending and the major changes, because we talked about what they've added, like side quests, but changes to the actual game, because the game played out pretty much how the original did, all the main points, but now they've added something what they call whispers to this game. And I remember when people were talking about when they completed it before I did, they weren't mentioning any spoilers, but they weren't happy. Some people said it was good, but they don't like it. It worked, but it didn't. So the ending. I mean, what? So basically, the whispers are entities of fate. They're there to ensure that events of the original game play out the same way. So no one can either die before their premeditated time, and key events have to play out a certain way, which kind of like in the original, like you talked about Sephiroth doesn't make an appearance in the first part of the game.
No, you only ever hear about him by name and by deed. And even when you find President Shinra's body, he's nowhere to be found. It's just his sword.
It's just his katana, yeah. But Sephiroth makes an appearance pretty early in the game, and I remember seeing it, I was like, oh, hello, Sephiroth. And you follow him around for a while, don't you? And I was like, okay. And this is different.
He's basically main cast in this game. That's how much he's in it.
He that's where you meet Arias as well, when you protect her from the whispers. And no, you don't meet her there. Sorry, do you meet her there? No, you have to. You meet her, then you realise she's been attacked by whispers, and these whispers, like I say, they're quite enigmatic at the beginning, but then obviously when you get to the end, you realise what they are. And how did you feel about these major new development? Because a character that was supposed to be dead is now alive. Is he?
Well, multiple.
Multiple characters.
Yeah, because
Does
like
anyone stay dead in this game now?
in the ending CG, you see. I mean, like Wedge survives the
Mm-hmm.
pillar somehow, even though
Yeah,
that's
he's.
where he dies in the original. And then he shows up in Shinra HQ, but then you never know if he comes out of there again. But then you see in the
Yeah.
ending that Biggs survived, and Christ knows how. He was on the pillar when it went.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they seem happy to let Jesse stay dead. So
Yeah.
yeah, Wedge is potentially still alive. Biggs is still alive, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's right at the end. Well, actually, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit early, you see this character, and I was like,
Mm.
it felt really out of place, but I was like, all right, I'm into it. I like Crisis Core because you get a
Yeah.
little, what seems to be a flashback of Zack just
Mm-hmm.
before his death in Crisis Core, and then you get another look at it in the end, and there's like
Mm-hmm.
when you defeat the Whispers, they all
Mm.
sort of like explode into gold confetti or something, and then
Yeah.
you see all the residents of Sector 7. You see them looking up at it and going, "Oh, what's this?" And you see,
Mm.
and it cuts to Zack walking towards Midgar, and he can see all the gold glittery stuff as well. So I'm like, is this supposed to be the same time? Is
Yeah.
he
It's
still
very.
alive? It's very confusing.
He walks past the main cast carrying, and the only one who seems to sense his presence is Arias.
Arias,
So I'm thinking, are we in a parallel timeline,
mm,
or is this an alternate timeline? I mean, timelines, Mr. Roars. It's a thing now. It's a thing, and it's now in Final Fantasy. Like a lot of films, a lot of TV shows, a lot of comics do that. Play with alternate timelines.
mm.
I think we might have one here.
And I mean, I'm not totally against that because probably my
No.
favorite story in a game ever is all about different timelines and parallel realities. Steins Gate.
What Gate? Yeah.
But I'm not sure it fits in this, and it kind of ties into the final playable area in this game. You go through a friggin' portal on the highway,
Yeah.
and then you're like in this sort of smashed up highway area, jumping
Uh-huh.
between sort of like parts of scenery at different angles and everything, and then you fight the Whisper Harbinger. That whole section felt like it belonged in Final Fantasy 13 too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I don't dislike 13-2. I actually think it's a good game, but it doesn't
Mm.
fit in this at all, as far as I'm concerned. It feels completely out of place. Like none of it
I mean, you
feels
got to fight
legally.
fate.
Yeah, that whole section doesn't feel like it fits in Final Fantasy 7 in tone or content.
Mm-hmm.
It feels completely different. I mean, it is completely different to the original, but it doesn't fit for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not against them changing things. I kind of, as I said earlier, like I always thought if they remade the game, they wouldn't be able to help themselves from changing things. So leading up to release, I've been telling myself, all right, just expect a reimagining, and then you won't be disappointed.
Yeah.
So I'm not against them changing things, but it has to
It,
work.
it did. They did say it's a remake, and that's what people were. I always thought they were going to include stuff from the expanded universe. That's what I thought they were going to add, just to tie it all together to make it more coherent.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like the other media, the not Dirge of Cerberus and Advent Children and all that, kind of feels a bit. Yeah, it kind of feels disjointed from the original game. If you know what I mean, it doesn't really flow that well. So I always thought they were going to include that, so it sort of, you know what I mean, flows, and they did. They included the for shot that exact final words. Well, we thought it was his final words, where he goes to fight the Shinra army. It's like for my honor as soldier. I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
It was pretty much shot for shot, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. It was very much the same dialogue and everything.
And I was
Keep
like,
your honor
okay,
as a soldier.
cool.
But
Mm-hmm.
then there was the other thing he said, guess the price of freedom's expensive or something. And I was like, I guess the price of freedom is high. And I was like, yes. The Price of Freedom is probably my favourite piece of music from the Crisis Core soundtrack. So I'm totally not against them putting Crisis Core stuff in, as long as Genesis isn't there. Put some more Zack in. I'm fine with there being more Zack. Maybe even Angeal if you want to put him in. But I don't want to see Genesis.
Just scared I was going to see Gak's face somewhere. It's like, hello. It's like, oh god, no. But yes, it sort of feels like that because it's a remake. They sort of added that twist of you think this is how the game's going to go just because you played the original. Well, not anymore. This is we're fighting to change things. And I was like, oh,
yeah. The whole fighting fate thing though is that. I mean, that is the core theme of Final Fantasy 13, and people hated the story in that. So I'm like, it's kind of bold for them to go for that again in the fan favorite game.
Yeah, they got balls for doing that. I'll tell you that. But
yeah, I don't think it fits.
Does it work?
I don't think it works.
Really felt.
There's
felt
nothing
really out of place.
Yeah, there's nothing in the original really about destiny and fate and all this kind of stuff. If anything, it's the opposite because like Cloud, it's more about sort of like accepting who you are and sort of moving forward and doing what you can. Because like everyone in the original game is defined by loss in some way. Like everyone has lost something major to them, and it has coloured who they are as a person. And literally, the whole game is about sort of like dealing with loss. I mean, there's a very obvious part of that dealing with loss in that game that surely everyone knows. But every character is defined by what they've lost, and they're sort of and everyone's journey is about overcoming that and moving forward. There's really nothing in there about this is fated to happen. Will you stand against it? And that just feels like a really cliched, overdone, very anime thing, and I don't really like it.
Yeah. So the future of the remakes, they could be changing how it. We might think that they're going to do each section and might make a whole game of it, but now it's open to.
Well, it can kind of go anywhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, will we still meet the other characters? I mean, Yuffie and Vincent were optional. You didn't have to have them in your party, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be not forced on you, but they're going to be canon to be in your party.
Yeah, I would think so. Certainly Yuffie anyway, because of how
we're talking about
Wutai.
Yeah, we're going to end up there in the next game, aren't we?
Yeah,
to make an alliance with it.
Yeah, honestly, I think Wutai are going to play a much bigger role in the remake.
We're going to have a war with Shinra and Wutai, and we're going to be on Wutai's side. Yeah, fighting for freedom.
But yeah, I mean, as much as I dislike the whole fighting fate thing, it does kind of leave like the future parts of the game wide open. It could go anywhere. And at this point, after that ending, I was like, right, okay, well, it's not going to be the game I wanted it to be, so I guess I'll just sit back and see where it goes and try and enjoy the ride. So at this point, if they change everything going forward, I probably won't really be that upset. I just go, okay, fine, let's see where it goes.
Does Sephiroth have control over Cloud? It's not really shown, is it? Because in the original, he has control over him.
Yeah, I was talking about this with someone else that finished it recently. Because right at the end of the game, he basically says, "Cloud, lend me your strength," and puts his hand out, and Cloud rejects him. But in the original, the way Sephiroth manages to summon Meteor is by taking the black materia off of Cloud. Like Cloud, he goes into a trance and hands it to him. So it's like, how are they going to do that now if they've already shown Cloud rejecting him?
I mean, Cloud fought him.
Yeah.
It was a good fight with Sephiroth, but yeah, you basically have the final fight in that section.
Yeah. I don't like what they did with Sephiroth in this because, as we said, like he's such an enigma in the original Midgar section, and then he doesn't really come into focus until much later.
Can I throw a curve? No, not a curveball, but a thought. Could this Sephiroth be from that original timeline, and he's trying to go back and change events. That's why the whispers are there to make sure that doesn't happen.
So it's funny you mention this because someone I saw a post on a forum yesterday actually, and from someone else that just finished the game, and they said, "Oh, basically, I'm taking this as my interpretation is that this is a new game plus, but the characters don't know it's a new game plus."
Oh god!
So it's like I don't know, like they're stuck in a time loop or something, and this is the next time. And I'm not massively against that because kind of probably my favourite book series, Dark Tower, did that. It's kind of stuck in a time loop, and you get to the end of the final book, and it just resets.
Oh no!
And a lot of people hated that, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go with that. So I guess if that's what they're doing with this, let's just hope Cloud has the Horn of Eld this time. Anyone that's read Dark Tower will get that.
But so I don't know what that you're on about, but yeah. So yeah.
So it might be a cycle kind of thing. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just along for the ride now, and I just see where they take it.
Or like you said, it could take another 10 years for actually get the whole thing done.
It could well do. They're not exactly known for getting games out on time, Square Enix.
Yeah.
I just hope they manage to put out Final Fantasy 16 in the meantime by a different team. And it's amazing because it really needs to be amazing because the last few have been good but not amazing.
One thing we didn't talk about, we talked about all the key points, but even the controversial ending. But one thing we'll probably finish on is the music. How was the music for you, Mr. Rors? New tracks, old tracks?
It's a really good soundtrack overall. It doesn't beat the original for me just because the original's so damn iconic. It's a very good soundtrack, and the tracks they took from the original and sort of reworked work really well. There are two pieces, one of which plays during the credits, that sound like they've been lifted straight out of Final Fantasy 13. Though, and I know I keep bringing that game up, but a lot of the major staff on 13 worked on this. But then obviously they're the same people that worked on the original game. But Masashi Hamauzu did the soundtrack, or he at least worked. I think there was like 3 or 4 composers that did this soundtrack, but Masashi Hamauzu was one of them, and you can really hear his influence in it because there are 2 or 3 tracks that if you pick them up and put them straight in Final Fantasy 13, they'd fit perfectly. You wouldn't know they were from another soundtrack, and those ones stood out to me a bit as not quite fitting in with the rest of it. But for the most part, I think it's a really good soundtrack.
I liked one song. It's after when the plate falls. I think it's called "Broken World." That plays after the when you're sort of trying to find survivors and stuff, and you're going through the wreckage. Well, not going through the wreckage, but basically just you fall. The plate's falling, and you're trying to like find anyone who survived. And you run into the refugees, but which basically all the characters you run into survived.
Yeah.
They're all alive. You managed to. It wasn't so much of a loss of human life, was it? It was more like you managed to evacuate pretty much everyone from the plate falling.
Which I think kind of takes the teeth out of that part of the story, really, because it was such a shocking moment in the original that Shinra dropped the plate and killed thousands of their own people. And in this, it's like, oh, don't worry, nobody actually died.
Those characters you like Tifa's landlady. He's alive. I was like, oh wow.
That guy who didn't like you at first, but then you did a side quest and he said, "Hey, you're all right, Merc." He survived.
Yeah, pretty much. I think everyone survived, and
I think the only person that actually died in this game was Jessie, wasn't it?
I think she got shortchanged there. She was probably like President Shinra died. Yeah. So that's Final Fantasy VII. I mean, we can talk probably a bit more, but we'll probably just be repeating ourselves and rambling. But overall thoughts? Yes, no. You liked it? Hated it? Would you give it anything out of 10, or would you want? How would you describe your experience?
I think I'd probably settle on about 7 out of 10. So when it's good, it is really good,
That's
but
controversial.
it is frequently very, very boring. And
there's a lot of highs, but there's quite a lot of
the highs are really high as well. When it's good, it's amazing. And
when they stick to the original story, it's so good.
Yeah.
Apart from Jesse's mission, which was a major high.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of the game.
Mm.
But there's just so much bloat, and every time the story starts to pick up steam, they slow it down with something that doesn't need to be there, like going through the sewers again or the train graveyard being extra long. And it keeps, in my opinion, it keeps trying to trip its own story up too often. To the point where I'm not sure I'd want to replay it, just because there are such long stretches of boredom in there for me. So because the highs are so high, I'd probably say a 7. If the highs weren't quite as high, I'd probably go as low as 5, because
Wow, that's pretty low.
I did frequently hate it.
Wow, controversial, strong opinions there. I'll probably go one above. I'll probably go for an 8. Like you said, the highs, they hit some pretty emotional highs. Visually, it looked fantastic. Obviously, the graphics were great.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the visuals.
Yeah, I know. But visuals are great. The graphics are great. Story beats some parts. Some new parts were really good. Like obviously Jesse's story, they added that in. That was really good. But yes, I don't think it was great. Like it doesn't. I don't think it was. Like some people saying it was.
It's not a classic.
Game. Yeah, it's not a classic. It's hard to judge a game when it's not finished, because clearly this is, and it's hard to justify a game that cost £50, which was basically they stretched out a 6-hour part of the game to 50 hours. That's my run. My length was 50 hours with a lot of filler. But there was parts I really enjoyed, but there was parts, like you say, where I thought near the end I was just like, I just want to get through it. I just want to get this to, just want to get to the end. And then you thought you get to the end with the bike chase. And that bit was, that bit was pretty cool. You get there, and then they completely,
and they drop another hour on you.
Yeah, with this out. I don't know. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel that didn't feel like Final Fantasy, that bit where you go through the I don't know, the time distortion bubble thing.
It did, but it felt like Final Fantasy 13.
No, well, yeah, it didn't feel like Final Fantasy 7. It just felt really off, and it felt like Final Fantasy 13, that sort of trilogy.
Yeah, very much like that. So I think my main takeaway for the next part is, as I said, I'm kind of just along for the ride, and just like, okay, whatever they want to do, they can do it, and I'll just play it and see what I think. I'm not going to sit around agonizing over how it's going to go. I'll just take it as it comes. But the main thing I want to see going forward is better pacing and less bloat. I don't take 5 hours of the original and blow it out to 50 again.
Before we end this discussion, where do you think they're going to take it? Like, if they were to sort of keep the structure of the first game or the original game, where would it go? What was after this? It was you go to
Calm, and then Cloud gives what he believes to be his history with Sephiroth, and then Tifa's like, that's not quite right. And then from there you go through the marsh with the Midgar Zolom. And you spend a bit of time, your character's going, we can't go through there, that thing will kill us, so you've got to go and get a chocobo. And then you go through the Mithril cave, you come out the other side, and you see that Sephiroth's just impaled a Midgar Zolom on a tree. And that's another thing where you sort of you still haven't really seen him at that point. You've only seen him in Cloud's flashback, and you see that he's done that to this thing that you had to run away from. And they just build up Sephiroth so well in the original, and they've kind of thrown that out the window with this one, which is disappointing. But as to what they'll do with the remake, I don't know. I mean, they could follow the same structure and just have you go to Calm and sort of have Cloud recount his history as Sephiroth.
They can't stretch that out for 50 hours. Though.
No, they can't do that for 50 hours. But then, like, have you doing some chocobo breeding, I guess, to get through the marsh, and then like, have you go through the Mithril Cave for an hour and a half, maybe.
That'll be like one big long dungeon.
Yeah. And then from there you go on to Fort Condor and then Junon.
Because Yuffie's optional, so I remember like you run into Yuffie.
Yeah.
You might run into her earlier, take you to Wutai.
That could be where you take this part.
That could be where you build up alliances. You have to win their trust, so you have to do some side quests for them. You know, so
if they want to make this into a trilogy and make the middle section sort of like building up your allies, as you said there, kind of almost like like the 3 acts of a BioWare game, but like each act being its own game, then yeah, they could do that. You could have you go to Calm, have the flashback, and then sort of like set out to Junon, I guess, as it was in the original, so you can get a boat to the western continent, and then have Yuffie sort of come upon you by the way and get detoured and end up in Wutai, and then have you sort of make alliances in Wutai.
I can see the majority of the next game happening in Wutai. Honestly, because what was that, 4 hours? 3? In the original?
Probably a couple.
I mean, you have to fight a load of masters and stuff like that. But I can see them probably stretching that out. Like you said, they do mention it a lot in the original. I mean, they say that we're Wutai collaborators, so yeah. So we're going to have to make a friend of, was the expression, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, sort of thing. So yeah.
So there's our bold prediction for part 2.
Come back in
meet
like
Yuffie
2 years.
Go to Wutai.
Come back in 2 years to see if we were right.
Come back in 2 years, and then we'll still be waiting for another year for it.
But yeah, that's our Final Fantasy VII Remake spoiler discussion. I mean, let us know in the comments if we missed out anything. Let us know if you liked it. Let us know what if you didn't like it. And let us know if we're completely like wrong and this game is a 10 out of 10. It's a classic. It's one for if it's the game of this generation. I don't know. Just let us know. Like, how did it compare to the original?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say because it's an incomplete game. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did it live up to your hopes and dreams? And if you've made it through this entire video, which is an hour long, thank you for watching it all and listening to us ramble on about it for an hour.
Listen to 2 jaded, haggard old men ramble on about Final Fantasy VII. So yeah, thanks for listening, really, and like and subscribe, and we'll see you again. Bye.